Hey, everybody. All right. So we are here. We have celebrities. You can throw the first slide up because we can. So we're here to talk about the Penny Arcade that was on Main Street. And there's a rich history behind that. For those of you that have only gone to Walt Disney World since like 1995, it's not there anymore. So you did know this existed, but from 1971 when it opened, and even in Disneyland there was a Penny Arcade. You could literally walk into this place and they literally had games that you could play from early 1900s forward for, as they said in the guidebook, for a penny, nickel, dime, or a quarter. And it was great fun. So I have Fox Nolte here to tell us a little bit about the history of penny arcades in general and why there was one. Todd Tuckey from TNT Amusements, who brokers and fixes and repairs arcade games, so he's our inside man. And of course, you know Brian, so.
Spent a lot of quarters in arcades growing up, so.
Yeah, yes. All right, so I'll let you take over.
All right, cool.
Have a seat.
Yeah, stand.
All right, well, so the history of coin-operated machines, without getting into too much detail, if you think about it, it requires a certain degree of mechanical precision to make a mass-produced item that will accept a coin, and as a result, coin-operated machines are simultaneously way older than you expect and not really that old at all. Basically, around like the 1860s, it seems pretty common to have developed cigarette vending machines, cigar vending machines. You can see examples on the screen where pretty much you'd just put a coin in the slot and you'd open up the top and you'd take a cigar out. After that, they began to get a little more sophisticated. Around the 1870s, they had something called working models. And a working model is exactly what it sounds like. You put a coin in the slot and like those guys would dance, or like doors in the house would open, things like that. You can see a Fatty Arbuckle next to a early fortune teller machine in Coney Island in 1917. They got much more intricate later on, as you know. Then there were strength testers and there were love testers and things like that. Those were common in bars. Scales. Once it became feasible to mass produce a scale, you could drop 5 cents in the slot and weigh yourself, which is something that no one had ever done before. But these were still all very disparate, like separate items that you might see in a bar or on the sidewalk or at an amusement park. And really the thing that began to bring it together and solidify it into what we now know as an arcade is the gentleman, Thomas Edison, who unfortunately we have to blame for everything. Thomas Edison, well, okay, so he was working on the phonograph, which he's pictured here with, and he had this idea that you could basically, well, if we could create a picture and we could synchronize it with the phonograph, then we'd really have something, but they had no idea how to do it. They spent time trying to print like pictures onto the outside of glass tubes and rotate them and things like that, but no one could figure it out. So basically, at a certain point, the Edison lab pretty much threw their hands up and said, whatever, we're just releasing the phonograph on its own, and that was in 1881. Now, the thing comes out on the market and it's incredibly expensive. No one can afford it, which means that it's a great thing to put a coin-operated slot on, which is exactly what happened. So the very first phonograph parlor that we know of exists in 1890, and that's in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's in a building called the Every Parisian Arcade. And there it is. Now, basically, the whole idea is that this was sort of like the Chuck E. Cheese of phonograph places. You could go in and it would be very middle class, and it'd be attended so that, you know, you couldn't be harassed by people. Now, whether or not this is where the term arcade comes from, probably not, but it's interesting. Anyway, back in 1889, George Eastman of Kodak comes down from Rochester, New York, and he has invented something called celluloid because he's trying to move film through rollers in order to capture it. And he goes and he shows this to Edison, and Edison immediately says, okay, that's it. Like, now we know how to move the picture past the eye. Let's get working on it. They began working on moving pictures relatively early. Edison built a studio that actually rotated to follow the direction of the sun. He basically came out with the kinetoscope around like 1893. It was actually supposed to be at the 1891 World's Fair, but they completely missed it. And so there's actually some promotional material for the Chicago World's Fair that has the kinetoscope parlor on it, but it actually wasn't out. They completely missed the deadline. So basically, by the early 1890s, you had developed these individual small businesses that were called phonograph parlors, kinetoscope parlors. This is an example of one that was in Los Angeles around 1910, I believe. If you look on the left, you can actually see the Edison kinetoscopes that people were sitting down and looking in. And in the middle are the mutoscopes that you're familiar. That was actually a rival invention that was created by the guy who developed the kinetoscope for Edison. The difference is that the Edison kinetoscope used film that was moving past you through this whole series of rollers, and of course it meant that the film could break. Whereas the mutoscope was much cheaper. It was just the cards that you crank by hand. Those are most of the ones that we know that still exist, and the reason why is because technologically it's dead simple. And then all the way over on the right, you can see people listening to phonographs. And so basically this, at this point, is what we know as a penny arcade. If you look all the way in the back, you can actually see chairs, and there's holes in the wall. And what would happen is you'd look through the hole in the wall, and back there they'd have a movie projected on a screen. And eventually that part of the business split off and became Nickelodeons, which became movie theaters. So pretty much penny arcades became cinemas, became video game arcades. And pretty much by about the turn of the 20th century, the term penny arcade was popular. By that point, they figured out you could make more money if instead of charging a nickel, you charged a penny. You'd get kids in, you know, who often had pennies, and spend them on candy. They'd spend them on movies. And so basically, that is where penny arcades come from. Most of them didn't survive World War I. Those that did ended up sort of pivoting after the war. The machines became more sophisticated. They began to develop sports machines, bagatelles, things that eventually became pinballs. And that is why there's a penny arcade on Main Street.
So that leads us to, here it was. Here is the penny arcade that it was on Main Street. And for those of you who want to know where it was, so it's number 8 on this map. And you can see that the penny arcade had a very unusual layout. So you'd enter from Main Street, but it wrapped all the way around the backside to what was called the Coke Corner back then, or the Corner Refreshments, which is now Casey's. So that's kind of, well, we will see when we get there later on. So in 1971, we have a pretty good idea of what was there. So you would find things like this Grandmother's Prophecy machine, which was a fortune teller. So there's still one of these at Disneyland named Esmeralda. Unfortunately, we lost this one here. So you'd put in a dime, and you would get a card telling you, what your fortune was going to be. And at the end, it always encouraged you to put in another dime to find out more. I think there are about 12 cards in that set, and it's great. So it was this automation. She would go back and forth with her finger, and then the card would pop out. Here are some of the mutoscopes that were inside of the arcade. There were actually 2 rows of it inside, but this is a really nice shot of what it looked like. And just like you were talking about, this is the inside of a mutoscope. So you can see how that circular pile of cards was inside. It's really, there's a light bulb, and then a place to look into it. And that's really about it. When you put the coin in the slot, it turned on the light bulb, and then you could hand crank the spinner, and it would flip the cards around just like a flip book on a little metal arm. And I'll show you what that actually looks like in real life. So a really simple mechanism, and of course, if it's not lined up properly, you only get about half the show, so. Maintenance!
We're going to need a penny from every one of you now because you watched that.
Yeah. There were some incredible music machines in there. This is a device called a piano orchestra. what I'll say is, like, Sully Sullivan loved this thing so much that he actually had a button installed in the back when he was running the Magic Kingdom, where they could push it and he could play it instead of having to have him put a quarter in. So really good stuff. It was named Miss Sadie, and here are some details. It was 11 feet tall, 7 feet wide, weighed 3,800 pounds, and it was actually made in 1911. Disneyland acquired it from a collector in California in 1953, and then it got sent to Walt Disney World in 1971. And here are some of the specs. So I won't go over, but it had a tremendous amount of music making ability. And so all of this class of devices would have pianos and horns in it and drums and all kinds of things. So you would put in your quarter, it would play sheet music, like these rolls with cutouts, you know, the piano roll style. And it was great. So here's a sample of what that sounds like. And that was an actual recording from that machine that I made back in the 1990s before it closed. So that's the real deal there.
Is it on their cassette tape?
It is on their cassette tape. In fact, the longer version is on your cassettes. Yeah. So the Penny Arcade also kind of leads into this gentleman, Paul Eakins. So he actually owned a museum that started out in Missouri in a small town, Sikeston, which then moved to St. Louis. And he had a very extensive collection of these kinds of machines. Disney actually rented out one of them in 1974 called Miss Sadie to use on the America on Parade soundtrack. So they actually wrote new music. I think they had to go to a guy in Germany to cut the books because no one did it in the United States anymore. They disassembled it, moved it to Nashville, put it in a TV studio rather than a recording studio for some reason, recorded it, broke it down, sent it back to him. But he decided to retire in 1977, and so Disney bought his collection, almost all of it. There was another company called Bellum's Cars and Music of Yesterday in Sarasota, Florida, that bought the rest of it, and he sold it all to Disney. And what that did is it brought an incredible array of weird things into our Penny Arcade that he had owned. So there were strength testers, like you see the grandfather clock and the lighthouse. This thing in the middle is an automation from either the late 1800s or the early 1900s from France by a guy named Gustave Vichy. This was originally a hand-cranked item, but as you said, they attached a motor to it at some point and made it cost a penny, so that it's this little automation of a guy. I've seen it called Paddy and the Pig, so it's, I guess, an Irishman, because he's got the little hat on. He's holding a piece of bread, and there's a pig on his lap, and he moves the bread over close to the pig, and the pig sticks its tongue out to lick it, and then the guy pulls the bread away, and he laughs, and his shoulders move up and down.
It's fun for the whole family.
In my life.
Yeah, and so I'm sure that was highly entertaining in 1905.
That's a working model.
That killed.
Yeah.
There were also mechanical games, so like, sports is big now, you know, sports was big then. So there were football games, baseball games, golf, really nice stuff. And you can see the years that those were from. And then as you turn the corner, we made a change from mechanical games to electromechanical. And that's why we have Todd here to talk a little bit about that world.
Hello, folks. Yes, the change happened probably in the 40s. And people wanted more, and they started making mechanical pinball machines and devices, rifle games, and they all ran on relays, miles and miles of wire. And these machines actually did a really good job. The fact that they worked so well back then and are still working now, because there are museums and people that collect these. People collect everything, and a lot of these older electromechanical games, as Hal pointed out, have still survived to this day. In 1977, everything made a change. electronics came out. And what happened is the mechanical machines were great, but they couldn't do everything. For instance, there was no memory. If you're player 2 and you had your bonus up to 6,000, and player 3 came up, it reset everything. And when it came back to you, it was still back to 0. With the computer running it, starting in '77, it could remember where you were and set up the board, which was a really nice feature. And they were very concerned, though, that the public would not accept electronics. So they made crossovers. They made a mechanical version, electromechanical, and a digital version. Now, Walt Disney, the Imagineers, I guess, wanted to show people the fun of these games, but they realized there would be a reliability issue, especially when you're looking at a maze of wires, which you'll see in a minute, and relays, because if just one switch, they're all moving like this inside, did not work right, the game would not reset back to 0. And think of it as a bunch of zeros and ones. The machine is looking for all zeros, and then it starts, and then you start scoring points, and then it starts adding features to it. The issue was how to make it reliable so we didn't have to be inside it all the time. So Walt Disney copied a lot of these machines exactly playfield-wise, but they put them into plain cabinets. So they didn't retain the same artwork, but inside they were driven by a computer board that you didn't see. You still saw the mechanical aspects of the game. And Casey at the Bat had one way after the arcade, Main Street Arcade closed, that I used to bring Tammy into, and we used to play it. And toward the end, it was starting to fail, and we went back, I think in 2016, I think it was gone. And we realized that was the end of the last mechanical pinball type machine. We don't know what happened to that one. But should we run the video?
Yeah, let's run the video.
We made a video back at my shop in Philadelphia, near Philadelphia, and we sell and buy these games all the time.
Well, we hope you're
And we'll go.
enjoying yourself so far. And now I'm taking over the screen, aren't I?
You're taking it over.
I take a lot of the screen. Well, this is Chuck and Scott.
Hello.
They're watching now, too, in the audience. And behind them is Lex, but he's working on another game. We thought it would be best to show you a mechanical pinball that's similar to all the mechanical machines on Main Street. Inside, you won't believe it, let me turn it on first. Inside the machine, look at what you have here. You've got banks of relays, switches, all kinds of stuff going on. These banks all reset when you're playing the game. It's unbelievable what can happen in something like this. There's a lot going on, and down here too. Now, I want to show you a contrasting game where an electronic machine, which this was made in '78. Starting in '77, you'll notice we do have drop target banks, and we have some mechanics, but in the bottom, it's just transformer. It's your power and fuses, and of course the speaker for the sound. I guess you noticed that on this game, actually you may not have noticed, this has chimes for your sound, your mechanical sound, where coils hitting these different targets like that. And see, that's how this game creates sound. When you hit things on the top, it hits things. Now, this is where it becomes unusual, because remember, the machines at Main Street Arcade were mostly reproductions. How could you make all of that into something that'll be more reliable as in electronics? So now, here's what happens. Come over here, let me show you. Now, when you hit this, actually, since you're on that side, Michelle's filming. When you hit this, do you hear that? Look up here. I'm scoring 10 points. Now, the chime is going. Okay, come back now around here to the back, and I'm going to get one of you to hit the same 10 points. Sure. Go ahead. That's this relay. Okay, now notice every time he hits it, it clicks, and then when it gets to the 10th one, it's going to hit this relay. Here goes 10. And did you see them both? Okay, now you can stop there. So when I hit it manually, I do the same thing. I move the 10, I move the 100. Oh, by the way, did you notice there's a fake number. See right there? It's a fake. It has a 0 in it. That never spins. It saves you money if you don't have a mechanism, so that number never changes. Now, I want to show you on the relay bank, one switch, one contact moves the relay, one hits the chime, and the other goes to the back relay in the bottom. So there's a lot going on here. Okay? Now, how does it know when it gets to 9? There's a switch here that closes when it gets to the 9, so then this 10 wheel will spin. It's amazing. Here, watch. You watch it? And then that moved 1, and then it made the 100 move. Now, on contrast, here, look at this. If we start this game, I want to show you the difference. Disney couldn't do all that, because to make all that would be too costly. All right, now, let's start this one. Now, let's go back to that same 10-point switch right here. You hear it? Ah, there. See, we go as we can go. See? And you hear the 10? Look at that. Look. Now, here's what happens. Those wires go here through the machine, and they go directly through this connector here, this one. These are all the switches, and it goes through this board, okay? The game figures it out and sends a signal down here, and you see this connector? That's just the sounds. There's 3 sounds and the knocker coil. And when you hit stuff, any of the 10-point switches, that's the trail it goes. No moving parts back here. Big difference. So that's what the Disney engineers and Imagineers can do. Yes, sir.
Do the folks in the back, when they're going into the back of their pinball machine, need to worry about the voltage?
No, no. Everything in the back of all these machines, everything is low voltage. I woke up that guy in the front row.
You had to do the gag, didn't you?
Well, I like doing that stupid gag. Can you imagine how difficult that would be to engineer your own electronics? But they did, didn't they?
That's unbelievable, yes.
They got rid of the relays pretty much for the most part. I can't tell you anymore, but I will show you my tacky ending. Good night. Now get out!
For those of you familiar with my channel, we have about 2,500 episodes on YouTube. We're also on TikTok. We got about 50,000 subscribers, and I hope all of you will subscribe. I need to get my subscribers up. But we do have a lot of Disney trips recorded with the girls, and we explore arcades. Just type in the search window, TNT Amusements Disney. That's a good way to do it. You can find all these videos.
I love the sparks that were generated on those relays. It looks so dangerous.
A little green screening, yes. Yes, I still editing on a 2002 film editor.
Well, speaking of old stuff, so here's samples of some of the electromechanical games that were in there. So what you'll see here are some examples. On the left side are the custom cases that Disney made. And on the right side, you'll see when the machine was sold from the manufacturer, what it looked like. So they made Formica-topped cases, which I think probably served two purposes. One is that it made everything look sort of uniform and old-timey, which looks good in an old-time arcade. And the other thing is it was a lot more durable because it was all Formica. They could just wipe it off if some kid got a bloody nose or something, and like they're off to the next thing. So there were rifle games, there were baseball games like this, and these are fun because you would hit one button and it would shoot a silver ball down, and then you hit the second button and there was actually a bat that would like hit the ball up into the play field and then into the targets. And then there were little guys up in the back glass that would run around the bases.
They were officially called pitch and bats.
Okay.
That's the name. That's what the manufacturers named them.
And then as we moved into the 1950s, space became all of the rage. And these were some more of the games that were in there. So the jet pilot game, you could fly around in a circle. I used to love the lunar lander game. It actually had like a physical model of a little lunar lander and a lunar surface that would spin. And you would use the control to like try to drop it down, and the fire from the LEM lander would have to fit into the hole that you see on the lunar surface in order to score a point. And then there were games like Sammy, which was a surface-to-air missile. And it was fascinating. It used a Pepper's Ghost effect to shoot like light traces like onto a spinning playfield on the ground.
That
Really-
also used 16 millimeter film.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, really, really good stuff. This is where you would go to get your change. So they never had tokens in the arcade. It required actual cash. So there was a person that would sit behind that counter in what I believe was probably the loudest spot in the Magic Kingdom, because all of the sound from all of these games would reverberate in here. And he would literally give you pennies, nickels, dimes, whatever, quarters, whatever you needed. And then as you turned the corner from the old-time games, we got into the modern era. So they had all kinds of, literally anything that was currently available at that time, and they would change them out quite regularly. So you could see basketball games and ride-on games and shooting games, and everything under the sun was available. One of the really neat things, which I don't think anyone ever called out, was that the arcade was also kind of a mini museum to the artwork that was done in the Hall of Presidents. So on the walls were these paintings of the Wright brothers. I love this one. So back behind these pinball machines, this is the establishing shot from the Lincoln-Douglas debate section. And I honest to God believe that these were the originals that were just put up on the wall because it was an asset.
Yeah, what else are you gonna do?
And once the movie is shot, what do we do with them? Oh, okay, well, let's just...
Did Darth Vader have a preference between Lincoln and Douglas?
Yeah.
That's actually screwed to the top of the pinball machine. This picture is about 1995, because that's the year Maverick came out in Indiana Jones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'd love to hear James Earl Jones say, "That's what you think, you tall drink of water." And there was this wonderful picture at the very top. This was, 12, 14 feet long. So the very top, you'll see the full-length version, and then there's more details as you go down. So this was a painting that was done of actual penny arcades. It looks like it was underneath an L train somewhere at the time. So just gorgeous piece of artwork. I think this might have been done by John DeCure Sr. So John DeCure Jr. is here, so we'll ask him later and try to get some confirmation on this. And this is just something that I found. Do we have any art history majors here? Anybody who is like an art fan? So this lady who the arrow is pointed on stuck out to me one day when I was looking at this, and I realized that it was actually a reference to an Edouard Manet picture at the Folies Bergère. So great little piece of trivia there. So what happened? Why did this all go away? So Brian, I'll have you real quick tell the story about when you went to the arcade for the first time in the 1980s.
Yeah, my experience with arcades had been primarily the Ocean City Boardwalk and the Plymouth Meeting Mall. We'd go in and there'd be Paperboy and Donkey Kong and Pac-Man, and there were pinball machines and skee ball, and so we make our first visit here when I'm 13 years old, and we walk halfway down Main Street and see the Penny Arcade. I'm like, oh, I want to go in the arcade. Can I have some money? And I walk in, and there's mutoscopes and the Dancing Man. And I'm like, where's Paperboy? What is this?
So the world was changing. And I think one of the big reasons that the arcade went away was because this gentleman, Sully Sullivan, retired in 1993. And the management at that time, the Penny Arcade, the cinema, it was considered not just retail, but as part of the show and an integral part of your Magic Kingdom experience. And so when the old guard disappeared and they were replaced by new people who came from retail backgrounds, suddenly there was this edict of like, oh, well, we need to measure to the square foot, like how much money everything makes and treat it like it's a Gap store instead of, this wonderful piece of history. And so things like, the firehouse, like all of this went away about this time. But they did build some new spaces. So in Tomorrowland, they built a new arcade that opened in February of 1995. And then our arcade closed in March of 1995 and was reopened as the Main Street Athletic Club later on. And then by 1997, all of that wonderful old stuff was dispensed of, sold to collectors and other folks, and was scattered around the U.S. But there were some other places. Actually, Todd, you mentioned that there were some games at this location, which was actually fun.
Yes, we were lucky enough to visit Disney Quest about 6 months before it closed forever. And I actually made a 30-minute video walking around it and experiencing some of the attractions, including the game room here. And we had no idea they were going to be closing it, so it was rather a shock. But you'll notice they were pushing the older games. All the games you see are from the 80s. And the Arcade Legends on the right side is filled with 80s games. That's what the new thing is now. We sell games that have a bunch of classics in it. And that's what Arcade Legends was. So they kept the theme 80s. They really did.
Mm-hmm. There are some places, though, where you can still find bits and pieces of these arcade treasures today. In the train station above Main Street, there are some mutoscopes. I don't believe that these ones came from the Penny Arcade because they had a lot of stuff in storage and warehouse. So I believe these particular mutoscopes, I think, were pulled out. But they did have the football game that was there and this other mutoscope. Over at the boardwalk, they have a couple of items, a mutoscope and an electric. I don't understand the concept of like how electricity could make you healthier, but of course it was the early 1900s. Yeah, let's get shocked. That feels great.
Doesn't work now, didn't work then.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things from that collection that they purchased. And this item from Paul Eakins' collection, Big Bertha, is in the 1900 Park Fair restaurant. It's a little lost, perhaps, amongst all the Disney princesses and whatnot these days, and I don't think it works like it used to. I think one of the things that I had read from people that had done maintenance on the machine, it was, now context, this was an item that was outside. They were very loud because they were meant to project this music all over the place. And it was too loud so they would dampen it and try to make it not so, still people would complain when they're eating breakfast when it played. So I do not believe that it plays anymore.
You're also dealing with the fact that a roll of paper makes this work.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, some of the later designers, though, will take the paper and transport it into the same thing the Constitution is written on, parchment paper.
Okay.
So if you play a piano now, a lot of the music's reprinted onto parchment paper. And I would think that they could do something like that for these so they can still work.
Yeah. And if you were out traveling, you can go visit the Sadie Mae at the American Treasure Tour Museum outside of Philly. Is that correct?
Oaks, PA. It's amazing. Amazing.
And also this other item, there's a Seaberg Model H at the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So there are bits and pieces of this around. Arkansas, shout out to Arkansas, all right. And if you want to have your own Irish guy teasing a pig with a piece of bread, this is the actual item that was in the Penny Arcade. You can, it's in St. Augustine. You can pick this up on your way home if you want, for the low price of $12,500.
But we think he'll take 12,000 even.
So thank you for taking this journey into Penny Arcades with us. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Fox. And that's it. I'm gonna go find a change machine and get some quarters.
And if you're in the market for an arcade machine, a skee ball, a pinball, you go to tntamusements.com. Todd ships all over the country and we'll get you whatever game you
Actually,
want.
overseas, too.
Overseas, too, so.
I have cards, and I have autographed cards, too, if anybody wants one.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Track
everybody.
me down. Trip me if you have to.
And we are going into our first break now?
First break.
Yeah, first break now. So
First
everybody-
break, stretch your legs.